Breaking news out of the NFL. The New York Giants are hiring Bills offensive coordinator Brian Daboll as their next head coach. That's confirmed by our Jonathan Jones. Daboll's been Buffalo's OC since 2017. He led the Bills to top 5 finishes in yards and points per game this season. Here with us now to break down this breaking news, Jonathan Jones, our senior NFL reporter. JJ, you reported the Giants finished their head coaching interviews earlier in the day Friday, and a decision could be coming hours later. Here we are. How did all this come together?
Well, here, I just spoke with a source, and Sherry, the word here is alignment. That has been so big for the New York Giants organization. And obviously, Joe Schoen, the new general manager, coming from the Buffalo Bills as the assistant GM there under Brandon Beane, being close with and working with, of course, Brian Daboll. It was always sort of a Daboll and Leslie Frazier, who interviewed earlier today. They were going to have the leg up because of the alignment that the Giants so sorely have needed. Remember, of course, Joe Judge came in there 2 years into Dave Gettleman's tenure, and Dave Gettleman got in there taking over. And it's always been a lot of arranged marriages in the New York Giants organization. And that's led to them having what is tied for the worst record in the NFL in the past 5 years. But in Daboll, there's no rubric, there's no textbook way to go about this search and say, this is going to be the guy, this is going to be the pairing that will lead us to multiple Super Bowls. But you have to feel great about your process. And the New York Giants took a lot more time, had these candidates talk to far more people than they had the first go round, at least with Joe Judge just 2 years ago. They feel very good about this process, and they needed, again, someone who was going to bring alignment, a group of guys who would bring alignment to this organization. They have that. And of course, it doesn't hurt that Brian Daboll is an offensive-minded coach as well.
You're talking about that alignment with GM Joe Schoen. What role did he play in the Giants picking Daboll as their head coach?
Yeah, so I think that we'd all be a little foolish if we didn't say that, of course, Daboll was a slight favorite going into this process. But when you break down the men that they brought in for a second interview, of course, Daboll was first up there. They also had Dan Quinn, who, before they ever got to this point today, Dan Quinn had already pulled his name out of the running, decided to go back to the Dallas Cowboys as defensive coordinator. Now, of course, Dan Quinn could have seen the writing on the wall that this was probably going to come down to Daboll or Brian Flores. Speaking of Brian Flores, I'm told that he interviewed very well with the New York Giants, but there are some questions about how things ended a couple of weeks ago with the Miami Dolphins, and if he needed to jump into another team, another relationship, if you will, so quickly after that. You look elsewhere, Patrick Graham, the current Giants defensive coordinator. I'm told that he interviewed well, and he is a guy that everyone who interviewed there with the Giants expressed interest in keeping as defensive coordinator. That's not to say that he definitely will continue to be the defensive coordinator of the Giants, but in speaking with folks there, that's a very strong possibility. And then finally on Friday morning, they interviewed with Leslie Frazier, whom one person said is just a fantastic human, who, if he doesn't get another shot at head coach, it would be a mistake by the other NFL teams. But ultimately, it was about familiarity, it was about alignment, it was about unity. But then lastly, Sherry, it was about Daboll being that offensive guy who can help Daniel Jones, the guy that they say they have been screwing up every opportunity they get, to finally right the ship with him.
So aspirations of what they were able to do with Josh Allen there in Buffalo. We've seen the way the Bills offense just exploded under Brian Daboll. You see it right here. Points per game went from 17.7 all the way to nearly 30 points in this past 2021 season. Total yards per game, a huge growth also on third down, 48%. Those top two, points per game and third downs, top 3 in the NFL.
That's right. And what you need from Daboll here and what you need from Daniel Jones here is you do need to see that growth along the offensive line. And that's something that Joe Schoen has talked about and addressed really in his first press conference. Hey, we're going to have to be better up front. That's going to take some work. And obviously they invested the number 4 overall pick just a season and a half ago in Andrew Thomas. You start building out the offensive line there. You're going to have to figure out the run game. Everything's going to start up front. And Daniel Jones has needed a run game. He's needed health at the wide receiver position. He didn't get it from Kenny Golladay in training camp. He didn't get it at all from his first-round wide receiver in Kadarius Toney. Didn't get it really from Kyle Rudolph. The list keeps going on, and eventually these stop becoming excuses and they become part of exactly who you are. But Daniel Jones, I don't think that anyone is necessarily saying that, hey, if he just gets an offensive line, this guy's going to become Josh Allen, that he's going to become Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow. But the Giants don't know that he can't just yet. And the fact is they have the number 5 and number 7 overall picks in this upcoming draft. When they were talking with general managers, it wasn't necessarily, hey, you have to keep Daniel Jones or else, but they wanted to hear from GMs and their decisions. And from what I understand, most, if not all, of the general manager candidates, including Joe Schoen, all said, hey, we can win with Daniel Jones. Let's build this team in the best way possible. And I do believe in the backs of the minds there with the New York Giants, they're saying, hey, let's see what we can get this year with Joe Schoen, with Brian Daboll, working with Daniel Jones and helping build this offensive line and this offense. And if it doesn't work, we can still cut bait. But in the 2022 offseason and in the draft, we have helped build the best possible team for whatever quarterback comes in 2023.
Well, this hiring now means there's a vacancy in Buffalo. What is next for the Bills OC? And Daboll was in the running for the head coaching position with the Dolphins. What's next in Miami?
So in Buffalo, look for Ken Dorsey, the quarterback's coach there. He was previously with the Carolina Panthers, worked a long time with Cam Newton, wound up finding his way up to Buffalo with Brandon Beane, who was previously an executive in the front office with the Carolina Panthers there. I can absolutely see him being elevated to that offensive coordinator position once all is said and done there. Meanwhile, with the Miami Dolphins, as you mentioned, Jerry, Brian Daboll was one of the 3 finalists for the Miami Dolphins position. The other 2 there, Kellen Moore, the Dallas Cowboys offensive coordinator, and Mike McDaniel there with the San Francisco 49ers. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Niners on Sunday and how that may affect whether Mike McDaniel can really do that second interview or not and when that can take place. But very clearly, the Miami Dolphins, they were no fools. They knew that the New York Giants could very well hire Brian Daboll. They have done so, and they said, hey, we're going to let that happen. We're going to schedule these interviews for early next week. And if Daboll goes, they are at peace with that because they like their other 2 finalists, again, Kellen Moore and Mike McDaniel.
The coaching carousel continues to spin. Jonathan Jones going to give us the insight and breaking the news for us. Thank you for the time, my friend.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.